History Crash Course with Jamie. Hey, did you go? The U.S. sends missiles to Russia to stop the spread of communism. Russia then reacts by sending missiles to Cuba, which were in the striking distance of Washington, D.C. The U.S. reacted to Russia by sending missiles to Cuba by grabbing prisoners of war that they had in captivity and using them as soldiers. The U.S. was setting them up for failure, therefore this was considered the perfect failure, where they were untrained troops that failed. Okay, I'm coming up, Tommy. You know, you got. Yeah, these troops were not very good at anything. There were a lot of casualties during the Bay of Pigs attack. JFK was a little stressed out, and not just because of the Marilyn Monroe affair.
Mr. President. Oh, okay. An American spy plane was down in Cuba.
Hi, welcome to History Crash Course with Jamie, and today we'll be talking about the Cuban Revolution. Before the Cuban Revolution and the Cold War, Cuba had a U.S.-backed dictator, Fulgencio Batista. He was elected as the president of Cuba from 1452 to 1959 and received financial, military, and logistical support from the U.S. government. Batista eventually built a repressed government and widened the gap from the wealthy and the poor. This gave an opportunity to revolutionists such as Fidel Castro and Che Guevara to lead a rebel army to overthrow the Cuban government. Fidel Castro conducted this revolt and called his army the 26th of July movement. The plan was to overthrow Cuba's authoritarian government. The revolt began in July of 1953, and it continued until the rebels were finally able to kick out Batista on January 1st, 1959, and replace the government with a revolutionary socialist state. Sientes esto en tu cuello, puto. Es una pinche pistola. Ya te chingamos, Batista. Y es nuestro gobierno.
As Tommy and Jamie reenacted, during the Cold War, Cuba, now a communist state, held relations with the Soviet Union, and that is how the Cuban Missile Crisis began. Because the U.S. sent missiles to Turkey, this created more tension with the USSR, since Turkey can reach Russia. Alarmed by this, the USSR took action. They saw how the Bay of Pigs mission was a failure, so they decided to send nuclear missiles to Cuba, which could reach New York City and Washington, D.C. Kennedy got word that Khrushchev had placed missiles in Cuba, and he knew that this couldn't stand. So for weeks, Kennedy and Khrushchev discussed and talked how a nuclear war could cost the lives of over 100 million Americans and Russians. Ultimately, Kennedy came up with a deal that the U.S. would not invade Cuba if the USSR withdrew the missiles from Cuba, and that the U.S. would also withdraw the missiles from Turkey. Khrushchev accepted this deal, and nuclear war was avoided.
Go. That's not Cuba.
Oh my god.